All right, let's jump right in and take a look at this post on what is advanced yoga, um, our expectation and the reality. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek here. I'm going to jump over to look at the caption. First of all, it's by this profile called Yogaphile. This is one of those accounts that basically just posts a bunch of different people's posts and then they build an audience, and usually they try and monetize it by offering that you can post on their account for a fee. You can post in their stories, sometimes even the link in the bio, and that's their little business. Personally, I think it's ingenious. That's a great way to monetize social media without making content, without having to do all the legwork. You're essentially just reposting other people's stuff, and then they do give credit. That's a very popular thing. They'll give credit for who the original poster is, and then they'll just usually have their call to action, follow for more, and then a standard set of hashtags. So you can see here the top hashtag yoga with Adrian. If you don't know, yoga with Adrian is a massive account on YouTube, and the girl's probably one of the biggest YouTubers around, but then also definitely one of the biggest yogis on YouTube. So standard caption, nothing really interesting to review here. And basically, it's just meant to drive traffic back to this account, Arhanta Yoga. So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper, actually, take a look at the post. So, what is advanced yoga? Our expectation, and then the reality. So, I think even this is like misleading. Um, yeah, I would argue like to have an advanced yoga practice, you should follow the eight limbs of yoga in order, and being on the eighth limb would make you advanced because you're at the end. Um, and each one, as far as I can remember, the traditional way is that you start with the first one, and then you don't progress until you've mastered them. So you have the yamas and the niyamas, each of which there's five, and then you have to master all of those in your life. I forget what the third one is. I think it's pranayama, and then the fourth one is asana. So it's like by the time you've mastered the yamas and the niyamas, and then pranayam, you would already be very advanced because you would have to do advanced pranayams. And like by that definition, if you've already mastered the yamas and the niyamas, like your whole life pretty much is already quite developed. You are insanely self aware. You have mastered your actions, your thoughts, your emotions. And now you're moving on to this. So, in the West, we like to just jump to asana, right? Skip all the other stuff, and then just try and do the hardest poses. So here, what is advanced yoga? Our expectation. So I think for a lot of people, my perspective on a lot of this type of thing is it's fine that Westerners get into yoga through asana first and then learn about the eight limb path, and then those who are serious start working on the yamas and the niyamas while simultaneously doing their asana practice. So it comes in stages, and my personal opinion is like I remember when I got into yoga, I didn't like the I didn't come across somebody on the street who was like, oh boy, I'm mastering my yamas right now. I got a himsa down pat. And it's like, you can't see that. You don't know that it's happening. Um, so for most people, they just don't really come across yoga except for the physical asanas because, for the most part, aside from meditation, you can't see the other stuff. You can't see what all the other components are unless you're sitting down and someone explains it. Maybe you attend a seminar or a class of some kind or something like that. But yoga, for the most part, is what people see first, and then they start getting into it. Then they realize there's all this other stuff. So, yes, but also no in terms of what is advanced yoga expectation versus reality. Now, my mindset as well, and so like, yeah, meditation comes after asana. So like this in and of itself is basically saying, oh, advanced yoga, this just looks like the next step in the eight limb path. And there's a couple things to bear in mind that I think a lot of yoga forgets. Number one is when yoga was really coming up in India, especially over the last several hundred years. Okay, I've been to India a couple times. Um, I've been in rural India. Like I've seen really poor people in really rural areas and what their life is like. And let me tell you something. The people who live that life, they are shredded muscularly. The women and the men. Nobody is out of shape. And the old people could probably run circles around your average Western 20-year-old. I've seen this in Sri Lanka too. Um, they are in shape, really, really good shape, especially for their age. And the reason for that is because they live very poor, simple lives, which means they have to do a lot of manual labor, which means they're in shape. So when we look back at yoga, there was already like you would come into yoga being in shape. That's a key difference. Westerners don't come into yoga being in shape on average, or if even for the most part, I would argue, even if you're skinny, most people don't come into yoga being in pre existing decent physical shape. And I don't have very much evidence to back this up, and I'm totally open to being proven wrong here. But my understanding is that when real yoga, back like several hundred years ago, these people were working very, very hard in the land to live their life. If you've never seen people harvesting rice or carrying water or dealing with livestock, you don't know how hard it is. Like I've seen people who are carrying kilograms of water and rice on their head. Grandmas who are like 60, 70, 80 years old and not an ounce of fat on them, and they are doing hard labor in the Indian sun. All right, it is no joke. So when you go and do asana, when you look at traditional yoga like Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and they're like, "Oh yeah, do this asana and then hold it for 4 minutes," they could say that because the people could do that because they spent their life doing this labor and they were already in shape. So, and I want to bring this full circle here because we think as Westerners that doing these advanced poses is advanced. It's not to them because they're already in shape. They don't need to practice for this kind of stuff. They don't, right? And why do we perceive these asanas as advanced? Because you have to be flexible, because you have to be strong, because you have to have good range of motion, because you have to have an extremely high level of awareness of the breath and the body, because you have to be extremely well coordinated. And for a lot of that, Westerners aren't even close on average. And I've seen this in Thailand too. When I was over in Thailand, in Phuket, like some of the yoga students, they do like no warm up. The local Thais would do zero warm up and then just pop into lotus pose. And at first I was like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Bro, we sit in temple for like so long." Some of them said hours. I don't know if they actually sat for in lotus in temple for hours, but many of the local Thais could sit in lotus effortlessly. And it's like this is just how we grew up. We sat in temple and we did lotus. So, like, it's not advanced to them. And when you look at the reality of what is advanced, Westerners have to understand that relative to doing these advanced poses above, it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, sit and meditate and like be super self-aware and know thyself. That's advanced." But it's like, yeah, but how many people can sit and properly meditate? Let me tell you, I can meditate. I can sit and meditate for an hour or longer. And when I was first starting to learn how to do it, I was sweating. And if you're new to meditation and you're trying to do it for a little while too, you're probably sweating as well. The reason why is because to sit up straight is actually a lot of work. You need a very strong back to have exceptionally good posture like this, and then to maintain it for as long as you meditate, and then be so strong that you can not only maintain it for as long as you meditate, but still meditate without it taking over your thought process. So, yes and no. And the reason why I think these asanas are considered to be advanced is because your average Westerner does not have the range of motion, muscle flexibility, nor muscle stability to perform most of these because of our sedentary lifestyle. And then we need to train the body to get to this point, and so it does feel like they're advanced. And it's because it's a long journey to get there. It took me years. Like I can do handstand scorpion, the second asana from the left. I can do handstand. I can do wheel. I can, well, seated forward fold's pretty easy too. Um, but like the point, so let's just go through this, right? Let's say handstand, because handstand is going to be a great example to the comparison I'm going to make here. And so with handstand, this image is wrong, by the way. They're not. They should be straighter than this, and the hips are off. The lower back is off. Technically, the head shouldn't be like that. It should be between the arms, but whatever. But handstand is essentially standing up straight, upside down. So if you can't even stand up straight on your feet, how's it going to happen on your hands? And if you are, and this is not to any one person individually, but if a student or a practitioner or even a teacher doesn't know all the ways that the body should be positioned for a neutral, proper standing stance, how to stand up straight, if that is not 100% clear in your mind, why even bother with handstand, right? So much of my work as a yoga teacher is actually just to get people to stand up straight and then build some physical muscles so that they can maintain standing up straight. And then we work on the flexibility so that they have the mobility in their joints and the flexibility in their muscles to actually do asanas. So it's a very interesting dynamic to sit in a meditative pose, especially on the floor without a block. You need very good hip mobility, and you need a lot of upper body strength to sit up straight. So yes, being able to sit and meditate for a long period of time does make you advanced as well. Um, but I think for most Westerners, like being able to do the asanas does require an advanced level of physical awareness, coordination, balance, balance of strength and flexibility, and decent theory knowledge on the anatomy and biomechanics, because to do a lot of these asanas takes that. So let's look at another example. Second image in from the left is handstand scorpion. So for example, if you're doing this asana, you need to know how to balance on your hands. You need to know how to keep your arms engaged at the same time. You need to make sure that you're pressing down and stabilizing through the shoulders, right? And then when we move upward, you need to keep your core drawn in towards your back to protect your low back while doing this advanced bend. And then you need to make sure that you're not squeezing your butt, because if you squeeze your butt, you're going to have external rotation on the thighs, which is going to cause extra pressure on the sacroiliac joint, which is it's the joint that connects your hips with your spine, right? So when your feet open wide like this, your hips curve back and put pressure on your low spine. Now, that's going to happen naturally in this asana. Your legs do externally rotate. Um, but the trick here is to let them do that without flexing your butt. So let me tell you, when you are upside down, balancing on your hands, intentionally externally rotating your thighs and knees, right? So your knees are going wide, but simultaneously, while you're trying to do that, you're not squeezing your butt so that your hips aren't pressing in on your spine even more. And then, trying to keep the feet somewhat close together, and then with your eyes, you're looking up to your third eye, and you're holding that while balancing and doing all this stuff at the same time while still breathing. It's advanced. Okay, it's an advanced asana. It doesn't make you an advanced yogi. Very different. And I don't know if you've seen my other videos, but I kind of have this stance on there's no such thing as an advanced asana. There's only poses you can do with sthira and sukham, ease and stability. So that's my stance on that. I can do all of these asanas. I can do them effortlessly. I personally don't think it is an advanced thing. It's just about whether you can do them or not. Um, in terms of meditation, like I've mentioned, I can sit and meditate for over an hour. It's no problem. I don't get anxious. I'm not wondering what I'm doing here. I just sit and tune into my breath and enjoy it. And the hour goes by very fast. And I know because I time it. Now, I'm not sitting here saying like I meditate for an hour every day. By far and away, I do not. But if I wanted to sit down and meditate for an hour, it would not be a problem. So, with this, I think there's also something to be mindful of. Like, people who go to this path, right? First of all, an advanced yoga, this doesn't, just because you sit and meditate in robes and you're bald doesn't make you advanced, right? So there's that. And this is why I'm saying like it's kind of hard to describe practicing ahimsa, practicing pranayam, practicing a high level of mindfulness, practicing inner peace. Like it's hard to visualize that for other people. So this is why we have this idea, and within the confines of asana practice alone, yes, these asanas are advanced asanas for most people, but I think it's underplaying the importance of the fact that in the eight limb path, asana comes before meditation. You need to master asana before meditation because if you don't have the flexibility and you don't have the muscle strength, how are you going to sit there? And to master asana, you need to master pranayam. If you can't breathe while doing the poses, you're not going to do the poses because your muscles don't get the oxygen to sustain the asana. So you need pranayam to do the asanas, and you need the asanas to do meditation. It's part of the path, and it's called an eight limb path, right? So especially, it's eight different steps, and you are supposed to go sequentially, but that doesn't make the top one better than the bottom one, right? It's not like, oh, this one's up here and this one's down here. It's like here's one step, here's another step, here's another step, here's another step. So yeah, take this with a grain of salt. This largely stems from a mindset that complains about people who are focusing on developing their asana practice, as well as trying to quiet down people who say that yoga is only these things, these advanced poses. I get it, but if you're in the yoga space, you'll quickly learn that this kind of post just is all over the place. And I see it in teacher trainings too. You'll always have students who are interested in learning more about the asanas, who are have some kind of asana practice themselves, maybe been working on it for a while, and they want to experiment or cultivate their asana practice a little bit more. And then very quickly, there'll be somebody who's triggered and goes, "Yeah, but yoga isn't about doing advanced poses." Every single teacher training, and it's like, yeah, we all know, but thanks for sharing. Um, you know, it's like I don't know. This is a little bit annoying to me because it's like what was accomplished by saying this? Did you actually help anyone? No. Did the people who think that only doing advanced asanas um, it makes you an advanced yogi, are they like, oh, you're so right. I've totally changed my mind. You're right. I'm gonna give up pursuing handstand because I'd rather sit and meditate. Not usually. I haven't seen anyone nor heard of anyone going through that transition. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but just that this pose usually comes from a place of someone complaining that people think advanced poses are what it means to be an advanced yogi. Often people with that mindset can't do those advanced poses themselves, and people who can do the advanced poses and meditate for a long time typically wouldn't say something like this. There's also the idea that in order to be an advanced yogi, you need to be meditating for hours per day alone in a mountain cave. And that's the only thing that qualifies you as an advanced yogi. And that is the very ancient way of doing it. Used to be that most serious yoga practitioners actually were doing many things to expedite death, to get closer to death, to be free from the body. That is what a lot of previous advanced yoga was. And all these crazy rituals, practices, regimes, the lifestyle before modern hatha yoga, which I'm going to say is like the last 1 to 200 years, maybe even a little bit longer. Yoga used to be basically doing everything to just get closer to death and to move into the next life or version of the spiritual realm. And It wasn't to be on this earth and enjoying this life, not at all. And then there was a significant portion of time where the yogis, the real yogis, went and they were just in caves. They were not excluded from society, as in like society pushed them away, but they chose to live lives that were extremely minimal, secluded. They were alone. They were not engaging in any kind of sex or intimacy or romance with anyone, and they would just study and meditate and practice. And most of the time, once you got to a certain level of asana, you just didn't practice anymore, or very little, and you would just do mostly meditation and pranayama. And that's definitely, in my book, that's definitely a level of advanced yoga because you have to give up so much to do that. But now now it's not really about that. Like I can think about, I've met many Indian yoga teachers who are young, and then I was trained by several yoga teachers who are very well qualified, very well experienced. My teacher himself, he actually practiced with BKS Iyengar and Patabi Joyce, and his approach was basically like that used to be the approach, but now we have many people who need the power of yoga, and so it's not the right thing to do for practitioners to go and be secluded and in mountain caves where they're away from society. People and the world need yoga, and so practitioners are to be out there and sharing the message of yoga, helping other people, and setting a tone, setting the path. So, you know, there's a lot to this. There's a lot more to it than it looks. Sorry, let me just go ahead here, and there's another page. More than just poses. Advanced asanas aren't the same as advancing in yoga. Wow, key distinction here. And I would even argue there is no advanced poses. There's only ones you can do with sthira and sukham. These postures are just one step of the eight limb path. Notice how they don't mention anything about the eight limb path in the original photo. True progress in yoga is about connecting deeply with yourself, finding inner peace, and reaching enlightenment through stillness. So, all of these things are true, right? And I'm not saying they can't happen in easy poses, but what I am saying is that for what is considered advanced poses, and I think to some level they are because most people can't do these, but in order to access the majority of these kinds of advanced asanas, you need to have an advanced level of self-awareness, breath awareness, body control, body coordination. You just do not simply wake up one day and do these poses. Let me give you an example. In handstand, you need to know how to engage your hands, how to engage your elbows without locking them, how to engage your shoulders, how to keep your core tucked in, which doesn't really look like it's happening here very much, how to neutralize your hips while upside down, how to internally rotate your thighs, how to extend upward through the heels and flex the toes or point the toes. There is so much happening all at the same time. It requires a very high level of bodily awareness. So, what I'm saying here, this is kind of my bone to pick with a lot of these kinds of posts, is that it's about connecting deeply with yourself. Yeah, you need to do that to do advanced asanas. Finding inner peace. Let me tell you, if you are emotionally volatile, doing handstand is not going to be possible because your emotions are too up and down. Your brain is scattered, therefore, your vision is probably looking all over the place. Therefore, you cannot find the physical stillness to do the asana. Reaching enlightenment through stillness. All asanas are asanas. You should be able to find stillness in all of them, no matter which physical asana you are doing. That breath awareness, bodily awareness, stillness should still be there. Which comes back to my point. If you can't maintain these traits, right? Connecting deeply with yourself, finding inner peace, and reaching enlightenment through stillness. If you cannot do that in simple asanas, then you definitely cannot do it in advanced asanas. And I would argue you need to know how to do that at all in order to even consider exploring advanced asanas. So, overall, as a post, it's a beautiful post. The content looks great. Find your path, deepen your knowledge with our certified yoga pranayama meditation course designed to help you explore yoga on a profound level. Right? So, I love the pitch. Um, that's great. Good call to action. They keep it at the end. They got a link there. That's decent. Uh, nice looking post, all of that. But I think the message is, well, one of the things that I would not sign up for this school purely based on the fact that this kind of mindset is how they're trying to attract students. And I would not want to be in a teacher training that attracts people with this kind of mindset just based on this one post. I haven't checked out their whole profile or anything, but if this is how you're trying to draw people in, I definitely don't want to be there, because it basically sort of guilt trips people for thinking this is the advanced thing, and then it doesn't give any space to people who can do these asanas and what else can be taught to them, because it's on the assumption like, hey, you're just trying to focus on these instead of doing this. My argument is if you can't do the part that they consider reality, you're definitely not going to reach the part that says expectation, right? I would argue the reality part has to come first. You need to know how to do that before these other asanas become accessible. That's my opinion. If you've got something that's counter to that, I'd love to hear it. Throw it in the comments down below. Don't forget, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.